Alright, let's see. Lights on, cameras on. I think I've got it in the right spot, so I should be good to go. What the heck? I don't really know who that is, so I'm not going to answer it. Alright. What goes, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Spooktober. And today, I think we're going to get into what I'm going to call the godfather of monster movies, and that is Dracula. Dracula came out in 1933 and stars Bela Lugosi, at least the American one, and I honestly had never seen this before filming this episode. I've not seen any of the original classic Universal monster movies until watching Dracula for the first time for this series, and I have to say, I think this is probably the godfather of all monster movies in general. Like you've got the Phantom of the Opera that came out in the 20s, I believe, and I think there was a Hunchback movie as well. But honestly, Dracula kind of, to me, I think is a game changer in terms of horror in some ways. Whenever you think of spooky, or whenever your grandparents say something is spooky, like this movie really this movie really is the definition of the word spooky. It has a very eerie and somewhat dark tone. It to me really screams what the true Halloween vibe is, and that's something kind of dark and mysterious and eerie, sometimes creepy, sometimes horrific, but for the most part, it's very dark in atmosphere. And it has this mysterious tone of something that could be scary, but it's still fairly safe, and that's kind of what Dracula does. First off, I want to say that I actually was very surprised at the lack of music within this movie. The only time you really hear music is in the very beginning of the movie. Most horror movies or Halloween type movies or what have you have some sort of musical score that kind of has something to do or has some form of attachment to the either the main character or the antagonist of the movie. And this movie has none of that. There is no musical composition in this movie. So it's all up to the storytelling and the acting and the atmosphere. And I think that's kind of the strength of the movie, is it lets the characters and the atmosphere of the movie carry it. It doesn't rely on a musical score, and that's kind of incredible to me when I think about that. We're talking about Dracula, so we have to talk about the actor or actors who have played Dracula. Bela Lugosi, definitely, by today's standards, some people might think he's a little goofy, but honestly, he has such charisma as the character of Dracula that it truly is timeless. There is no other adaptation of Dracula as memorable as this one. There's a reason why whenever people think of Dracula, for the most part, they think of this interpretation of Dracula, and it's kind of become a bit of an icon. Also, I want to say that the actor, which I forget the name of the actor, and I apologize, I'll put it on screen. The actor that plays the American version of Renfield truly is maddening. Like, I kind of loved it, to be honest. Like, you could see that he's not all upstairs, and he's kind of messed up because Dracula's really pulled a number on him, and is a true definition of the word lackey. And I kind of love it. I kind of love the interpretation of Renfield in this movie. Also, another thing, Van Helsing's character is very interesting, and I am very glad that he didn't turn into your typical, like, whenever characters in slasher movies are supposed to be very smart and then they do one stupid thing that really messes them over and it's really against the character, Van Helsing's character, not like that. There was one moment when I was literally thinking out loud to myself, please do not tell me he does this one stupid thing that's going to kill him. And he doesn't, because it would totally be against his character, because this is a guy who knows how monsters work and knows how Dracula works. And you'd think, considering how a lot of movies tend to make a twist and kill off the smart character, which is, like I said, completely against character, they don't do that with him. He is completely smart throughout the whole movie, has his head on, knows how exactly to kill off Dracula and beat him at his own game, which I highly am so glad that that's the case. There are a couple of things I do kind of have issues with the movie, and at least there are some things that I have issues with, and there's some things that are a little dated, but that don't really hinder my appreciation for this movie. One is, honestly, towards the beginning, when we get to meet Renfield and when he's at Dracula's castle, he doesn't really seem confused or anything. He's kind of aloof, and some could argue that that's the great thing about his character and make him memorable. To me, it kind of diminishes the character a bit. I think he's kind of way too goofy. I didn't care for that. Now, when he becomes full Renfield, I really did enjoy it. But before, I kind of wish he was a little more mellowed out and is kind of taken off guard and is very confused and somewhat frightened by the character of Dracula that he meets. I kind of wish we got that to develop into the maddening character he would later be. Also, there were some weird shots and editing choices where these scenes kind of play on a little too long, or they're definitely either reusing some of the same shots, or it's an obvious freeze frame, like a close-up shot of a still image, which is kind of goofy, is a bit hilariously bad in some ways. There's one shot towards the beginning of the movie where the lady is trying to give Renfield this cross necklace, and you can tell it's not the camera like close-up on the necklace. It's straight up just an image of the cross, like for a good solid 5 seconds almost, and it's kind of it's a little too humorous, and also it plays a little slapsticky for a movie about Dracula, this gothic, larger than life horror character, which is kind of disappointing. However, I will say the Spanish version kind of fixes that. Actually, I've heard from many for a while now that the Spanish version in some ways is actually better than the Americanized version, which they surprisingly shot back to back, or at least they'd shoot the American one during the day and then they'd shoot the Spanish one during the night. And it's kind of fascinating because in some ways it's the same story but told ever so slightly differently, and my problems with the American version is kind of fixed in the Spanish version, which is great because you have the problems I've had with Renfield in the American fixed in the Spanish version, where he's kind of taken off of guard and is very off-putting by Dracula's mannerisms and this very creepy castle that he's obviously in, and you get to see that transition between this normal guy who's basically scared and worried where he's at, into this man who's essentially lost his mind, that's now perpetually a slave to Dracula, which is great. I think I still kind of like the character. I like the actor that did Renfield later on in the American version, but I love how he starts off in the Spanish version much better. And I think, to me, it's really great to watch one version and then watch the other version right after to kind of do a comparison, because say if there's something you didn't like in the American one, like I did, you can find a lot of redeeming factors from the Spanish one. All in all, my thoughts on this movie is it is a true classic, and it's definitely one to watch around Halloween, and I think I may have to put this in my wheelhouse of what to watch around October. And honestly, kind of makes me excited to dive more into the classic Universal Monster movies. So I'm really looking forward on that trek. But those are my thoughts. What do you guys think of the movie? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Have you seen it? Have you not seen it? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoy this first ever episode of Spooktober. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like content like this and want to know what else comes out and keep up to date with everything. And I'm so very glad that you are on this ride with me of Spooktober as we dive into more Halloween type content. I appreciate you all as always, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Why does this person... Who is this person that keeps calling me? Stop it.
We're gonna play a little game.